Ooh, what can I say? I love pulseras. Call it the Mexican material girl in me, but I just love wearing something cute that reminds me of Mexico. And my boy Berto does a really good job of making stuff that you can wear if you're still in the broom closet, or if you're like me and you want to let your inner bruja roar. And if that's not what you're looking for, if you're looking for someone to do tarot readings, well, Berto does those too. And let me tell you, he's really accurate. Every time that I have lost something, I message him, and within 2 minutes after his reading, I find it. He's gifted. So please check out Las Flores de Guadalupe, Berto's shop. See what magic he can whip up for you. Bienvenidos, welcome, and I'm glad that you are tuning in to another episode of Tu Tia Bruja. I'm Bex Carlos, your host, and whew is all I can say. We're just in Aries season, right? Probably hasn't been more than a week at this point. But anyway, yeah, I think the air feels a little different, a little heavier, a little bit more exciting. But Mars is a complicated planet, right? And that rules Aries, and that rules over desire, aggression, passion, anger, and our most primal instincts. So I feel like it's understandable that everything feels a little bit different right now, especially when we're switching from Pisces, very different beast. And in addition to that, I think we just had that Virgo full moon. So I feel like there's been a lot of, at least in my opinion, there's been a lot of sense of like needing to ground, and really analyzing life and myself and the role that I play in it, the role that other people play in it, and our interactions with each other and the way that we hurt each other. I don't want to talk a whole lot about like the stuff with Chris Rock and Will Smith, but I will say this. I think that society is very confusing to me because it gives us mixed signals in the sense that we should stand up to our bullies, and then that violence is never the answer when an event such as the Oscars does sweeps of homeless encampments and finds people who are already down on their luck. I just think society doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And also, I implore you to think about the fact that Hollywood is an institution too, right? So you have the church and you have government, but you also have Hollywood. And we really need to start digging away at the fat of all of the fucked up stuff that Hollywood is responsible for that we don't talk about, and the systemic violence of children, emotionally, mentally, and sexually. We need to talk about the fact that it is an unbalanced playing field, and there are actors and filmmakers and creatives that rightfully should be paid for their work, but the amount of money that they make for their work puts them at a status where they're completely disconnected from their fans and the general public and the people who elevate them to that status. So there is a disconnect, right? And I think that it's really fucked up that they get paid more than teachers and nurses for their contributions in the world. But I didn't make up the rules. And this is all to say that like Hollywood is an institution too, and institutions cause violence. And, you know, I've been thinking a lot, Karaya Magia, if you don't follow them, by all means, please do. We've collaborated and did a giveaway in the past, but they were discussing how West Side Story is really just like a way of, oh, this is what Puerto Ricans are like, right? Through the white gaze. You know, it's still a film that's being commended to this day. I think that that is something we need to think about. In addition to, there's a podcast that you should check out if you haven't already, right? It's called Hollywood in Color. And Hollywood in Color discusses a lot of the history, lore, knowledge behind people in the industry who are not the Anglo-Saxon looking norm. I think that she does an amazing job of telling the stories of various women, both Black and brown, who shook up the narrative. So you should check that out. And she helped explain where a lot of like stereotypes, where they came from, and how the film industry played a part in creating a lot of those. It is an institution that also creates violence. And I will say that. And I also want to say that I just hope Jada is okay. Society acts like our hair isn't a huge part of us, but it is. Like, I see so many people out there saying, like, but it's not terminal. Alopecia isn't terminal. You're right, it isn't terminal, but it's still an immune disease that you have no control over. It just happens when it happens. Sometimes it comes back. Sometimes your hair doesn't come back. Sometimes, you just have large patches where you've lost hair. And there's a lot of importance on women and what our hair is like and the femininity attached to it. And Black women don't need to be the butt of jokes. And I feel like we should have more empathy for what she could potentially be going through. And just to remember that, like, violence comes in all forms, okay? When I was in Mexico, it's interesting. I saw this chart and it pinpointed the different types of violence that maybe we don't recognize. And it has this just like kind of concerning. This is super concerning, and this is the most concerning. At the top right, you have, I'm going to translate them, but if you want to see the original photo, please go on my Instagram. Jokes that are intended to hurt, to humiliate someone in public, right? To humiliate someone in public, because that is violence. That's just taking the opportunity in front of all your peers to bash this person. So, and I understand that to an extent, like, right, you sign up for jokes. I think what's the most hilarious to me, right, is the white talking points that I keep hearing over and over and over discussing, they're surprised that nobody hit Ricky Gervais. And it's like, Ricky Gervais does not make fun of people based on their outer appearance. Ricky Gervais makes jokes based on people's behavior, right? And I think that there's something different about criticizing behaviors that people do that are just violent or part of who they are that they won't acknowledge. I think that that's very different in an industry that for so long made her have to style her hair in ways that she didn't want. And then when she finally did have autonomy over her hair and decided she wasn't going to play the game and she was going to do what she wanted to do with her hair, the universe was cruel and took it from her. And that just seems really harsh. And I just think that we should all practice more empathy. There are so many people who have said it better than me, but that's just my general takeaway if you're listening. Speaking of empathy, I think I've been really re-examining my role in true crime and how I also allow for hurt to happen to people and how we all in different ways sometimes do. And I think that we need to think more about how to be more ethical consumers. And I think at some point there was a switch, right? Because I feel like my interest in true crime was based on unsolved mysteries and Primer Impacto, and a show that like kind of almost presented it like in a news kind of format. And now we listen to podcasts, which consist of essentially two or more people talking about a story that happened. It all depends on how they tell that story, right? But one that I really would suggest that you check out is Sisters Who Kill. Sometimes monsters are born, but sometimes they're created. And I think that we fail to see how our society really fails people. Marah and Taz, they do a lot of different types of cases, and they're all amazing episodes. Please listen. One that really stuck with me was there was a child who was like grade school age, and she was living with her grandmother because like her home life with her father and his new wife was just very toxic, and the grandmother was totally fine having her there. It was a much healthier environment for her. She was providing everything she needed for the little girl, and the way that the courts are set up, she had to go back with her father and her stepmother who was actively abusing her, and realizing that it's not just this story. It's what happened to someone and their loved ones on the worst day of their life. And I understand that it's public record. We can look it up. It's a form of entertainment now. Like, there are all these different ways to like find the information. But I also think that, I don't know, the fact that we're making mini series about true crime cases without the consent of the family, I think is really telling of what we're doing to victims. And I think that it's really fucked up. And the one that I really want to address, only because St. Louis is a small place, I dated, and this was many moons ago, correctional officer he informed me of the case because I had no knowledge of it. And then I was talking to someone, which this conversation in hindsight kind of makes me cringe. But I had asked an individual I worked with if she was interested in true crime. And she said, at one point I was, but then my mom was killed by Pam Hupp. Hulu is doing a series about Pam Hupp. I think it's called The Thing About Pam. All you really need to know about that case is that that woman killed Betsy Faria because she wanted her life insurance policy, and she had told Betsy that she would distribute that life insurance policy to her two daughters. As we all know, that's not why she did it, and that's not what happened. And those poor girls haven't received a cent of that money. Life has been very unfair and cruel to them. And there are so many people who are now sitting around taking in their life and their trauma, and they don't receive anything from that. Renee Zellweger next year will probably be at the Golden Globes getting praise for her role as Pam Hupp. And I just don't think that's fair. That takes me back to remember that Hollywood is also an institution that causes harm. And that's on Hulu, and I don't recommend that you support it. But something that is also on Hulu is Questlove film Summer of Soul. And I think that that should be something that we take away from the Oscars. Honestly, Questlove did something really beautiful, and he became the storyteller of an event that we didn't have enough information on. There's something very powerful about being the one that decides to tell a story. And that's what he did, right? So he made this documentary film about the 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival and safe spaces for people to be able to network and create and see and be around art and creations that are centering them is so powerful. It makes them feel seen. It makes them feel like they're not alone. And he did that. He decided to go through these archives and find all this information. And I think that that is just so amazing and beautiful. And you really have to have a passion project that you just really want to put out into the world that makes that happen. So I'm really glad that he was able to get his flowers during Aries season, because it was a passion project for him and he deserved that Oscar. Aries season is a lot, everyone, and I just want you to remember that it is a great time to try to build up things that you love. It's a great time to really just be sexually inquisitive and explorative. If that's something you want to do, now might be the time to do it. You know, I think that right now we just have to breathe, practice empathy, and really just try and ground. Like I was telling you, we got to try and ground because everything feels a little bit more hot than usual. But we'll get through it. I have faith. Thank you again for listening. I value that you have enjoyed the show. I'm really happy that you come back to enjoy the show. And if you were a first timer, I hope that you consider coming back. That's all I have for you. Have an amazing day. Bye.
Mm-hmm.